All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ACS Cricket Podcast for the fourth in our series of live recordings in front of an eager Zoom audience. A few notes of housekeeping before we begin. Well, one of them might be disposable since I see you're all automatically on mute and that only I, for the time being, have the power to unmute you. So I'll dispense with that one. Second, feedback and suggestions are always welcome. So please do contact our membership secretary, Hugh Nathan, who sent you your Zoom link with your thoughts and feedback on this event, your ideas for future ones, and I hope I'm not being too optimistic here. Your offers of volunteer assistance, I'd certainly be grateful for any help in preparing the transcripts, and I think it would also be helpful to have an understudy for hosting duties as my own personal schedule occasionally intrudes. Third, we now have a full roster of these events through to July, a steady rhythm of two a month. So please consult the latest membership bulletin or the calendar we've just set up on Google to keep abreast of everything. Although we don't expect our next event on April 25th to be quite as well attended as this one, we would ask that as many of you make the effort there as possible. I know Saturday nights are a bit suboptimal, but our guest is based in New Zealand, and between his schedule and his time zone, this was the best we could do. Given the polemical nature of his talk, he'll be holding forth on what he considers to be the perils of India's cricketing hegemony. I think it's doubly important that we have a good audience asking good questions for that one. So again, that's April 25 at 7:30 UK time. With that, let's introduce today's guest. Peter Cox is an ACS member in good standing and a retired systems director at Waitrose, having enjoyed 3.5 decades with the John Lewis partnership. In his youth, he was a fine cricketer, captaining Derbyshire and the North under-19s before his eyesight curtailed his county prospects. But he remained devoted to the game, running a friendly roving team for many years. Today, his passion continues through his three teenaged grandsons, who are playing academy cricket for Worcestershire, and through his writing and research. He has authored 7 non-fiction books, beginning with 60 Summers, his acclaimed history of the England Test team, and I hope not ending with the subject of his talk today, a new 2-volume work marking the quasquicentennial of the county championship. 125 Summers is a deft blend of narrative and statistical analysis, enabling readers to compare players and counties across eras, from the competition's Victorian and Edwardian roots through its golden years to our own day, when of course it has been rather nudged aside by shorter formats, relegated to the damp margins of spring and autumn. Taken together, these volumes offer an eclectic overview of English cricket's most enduring competition. Without further ado, then, please join me in welcoming Peter Cox.
Hi, everybody. Now, I've written a document for this, which I'm going to share with you now, and I shall speak to this. Rodney essentially read this byline out for you, so I won't repeat that. I split the book into 5 periods: before the First World War, between the wars, and from 1946 to 67, which was the arrival of one-day cricket and the influx of foreign players. That's book one. Book two takes us from 1968 to 92, the switch to 4-day cricket, and 1993 to 25, and that's followed by a stats section for the whole 125 years. So volume one covers the first 3 periods, volume two the last two, and the stats for the whole 125 years. Now, each year I go through the championship highlights, usually concentrating on the final run-in, which used to be August but is now September, as we know. And each system I list the top teams and top seasons averages, including, as few do, the top all-rounder, who could be regarded as the most valuable player of the summer, worth 2. From time to time, I insert narrative interludes, 44 in all, and one such looks at the effects of the miners' strike of 1926 and how it led directly to Derbyshire's sole championship win in 1936. Derbyshire was my birth county, and my great-grandfather bowled fast left arm for them in the 1880s and 90s. Another examines the effects of the Second World War and delaying young cricketers coming through, so that England cricket was poor for the first 6 post-war years, but our test team remained unbeaten in a series in the following 8, its best ever run. And I look at the effect of various law changes, such as successive alterations to the PW law. This is a typical stats at the end of the first each year. This is 2025. Division One, Division Two tables, and then top five batsmen, top five bowlers, and top all-rounder keeper and catcher. The top all-rounder was Louis Rees, averaging 64 with a bat and 19 with a ball, which is pretty impressive. Now, this is an example of one of the year's highlights. I won't read it, but it was the amazing game when Glamorgan visited Gloucestershire at Cheltenham, which went the distance and ended on the last with a tie on the last ball of the match when Bracey caught McIlroy with his gloveless right hand. And you would have seen the film of him galloping around the ground in ecstasy as the game was tied. The highest fourth innings score of any tie, 592. Astonishing. So that was one such example. And each year I give you the various highlights. So there's about 3 or 4 pages to a year. Now, this is, I hope, of interest to you as statisticians. Hitherto, nobody has attempted a fair comparison of batsmen and bowlers across different generations, which seems to me a strange lapse. For example, in 1894, the average runs per wicket was 16.55. In 1990, it was 38.73. In other words, a factor of 2.3 lower. In 1894, the batsman with the highest average was William Gunn, the founder of Gunn and Moore, with an average of 37, and the bowler of the lowest average was Ted Wainwright, 10.17. In 1990, the respectively top were Graham Gooch, 99, and Ian Bishop, 18.4. If we apply a multiplier based on the average for the whole period, 25.4, we get this outcome. In 1894, Gunn's 37 becomes 56.79, and Wainwright's 10.17 becomes 15.61. Gooch's 99.12 becomes 64.58, and Bishop's 18.42 becomes a very respectable 12.0. So in order to get a batsman's normalised career figures for each season, I calculate each year separately. I take his run scores and multiply his completed innings by 25.4 divided by that year's runs per wicket. For bowlers, I take his wickets and multiply the runs conceded by 25.4 divided by that year's runs per wicket. And here are the top players, batsmen, bowlers, and all-rounders. Here are the top batsmen. Top was Ranji, whose average goes up from 62 to 68. And it's amazing, really, that the top two batsmen came from the same county in the same decade, Ranji and Fry. And if you look, Geoffrey Boycott has an average of 58.27, which would have made him second behind Ranji. But because he was in an era where the bat was a little more dominant, not much more dominant than the ball, his normalised average goes down to 57.2 and he drops from second to fifth. So now the top bowlers are interesting. The top bowler of all time was Richard Hadley, whose average goes down from 14.5 to under 13, followed by Verity. And in fact, there are 3 West Indian quicks in the top 10, Malcolm Marshall, Courtney Walsh, and Sylvester Clarke. If we look at the top all-rounders, I would expecting either Woolley or Hurst or Rhodes to be the top all-rounder. But in fact, the top all-rounder turns out to be Frank Tarrant, the middle Australian who played for Middlesex in the years before the First World War. Like the foreigners who came in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the advantage they have is that they have their early years when their averages are poorer elsewhere and arrive mature, and they leave mature as well. So they have a better chance of having good averages. It is interesting that the best all-rounders really were before the First World War. Tarrant, Woolley, Hurst, Rhodes, old Jack Hearn, and Roy Kilner, and Stanley Jackson as well. Oddly enough, you'll find Dennis Compton in there at number 10. Because he took 450 wickets at 29, which normalizes that to 30, which gives him a multiplier of batting average over bowling average of 1.7. If we look at the top wicket keepers, those who played in the 4-day period do very much better because the games are longer and the preponderance of quick bowlers gives them more caught behind. So it starts Reed, Foster, Batty, Ambrose, French, Wallace, Nixon, Rose, and only Les Ames and Jack Russell come in from earlier eras. Now, because the stumping percentage of all of them, apart from Ames, is very poor, I looked at the stumpings, the best stumpings. And Les Ames has an average of 140 stumpings per 100 games, followed by the other Kent stumper, Jack Hubble, Walter Livesey, and the post-war Hugo Yarnold of Worcestershire, all of whom had spinners, which enabled them to make so many stumpings. Ames had Freeman, Hubble had Woolley and Blythe, as Hewish had Blythe, actually. And then the top catcher of all time, narrowly from Peter Walker and Graham Roop, is Marcus Trescothick, who caught 434 in 280 championship games. Now, I created something for my 60 Summers book called an entertainment index to indicate the entertainment a particular day's cricket provided the paying spectators. And after some reflection, I calculated it as the number of runs per day plus 10 times the number of wickets per day. People want to see run scores, but also wickets falling and thus a turnover of new batsmen. So on the first day of the crucial second Ashes Test of 2005, England scored 407 all out in 79.2 overs, an index, therefore, of 507. By contrast, on the first day of the first Ashes Test of 1953, Australia scored only 157.3 for three, and the index of 187, little more than a third of the 2005 figure. Using this measure for every year from 1890 to 2025 gives us a maximum for each year of 534 in 1911, disregarding the anomalous two-day year of long playing hours in 1919, and the worst was 400 in 1967. To the surprise of no cricketing historian here, the best decade was 1905 to 14, when it reached an average of 511, while the worst decade was 1956 to 65, when I was watching my cricket as a boy and a teenager, when it was almost 100 less at 413. Much of the difference today is the fewer overs bowled, 104 in 6 hours in theory, but often less and over longer playing hours. For the whole period from 1890 to 1955, 120 overs were bowled in a day because there were many more overs by spinners than there are today. Each period, I look at the grounds we have lost. The number of county outgrounds that we lost to the championship. In 2025, there are only 25 grounds used for the championship, with 12 counties using just a single venue. It's a shame that today's paltry number of champion spectators rattle around in big venues that can house 20 times as many, while pretty outgrounds go unused. In fact, since 1890, as many as 109 grounds have been lost to the championship. In the final stats section, I look at whether counties fought above their weight by comparing their populations, plus a proportion of the population of bordering minor counties, with their average position over the years. Worcestershire are the county faring best by this measure, and Somerset the worst. I look at the percentage of players born or educated in their county. The 1930s had the best percentage, 71%. It is halved from there to 35% in 2025, with Yorkshire, of course, still the best at 81%, with Lancashire and Essex over 50%. Derbyshire's the worst at 12%. Leicester reached rock bottom under Ray Illingworth during their first title-winning year of 1975, with just 1%, Graham Cross playing 6 games. Then, because it's come under the microscope recently, I examined players' workloads at 10-year intervals. How many overs a week have they bowled in all competitions? I mean the quicks. Up until the 1950s, it averaged 77 overs a week, but since then has dropped until in 1925 it fell below even 20, with the player who bowled most overs, Northants Ben Sanderson, averaging just 18 over all the competitions. Of course, the number of days played in a season has increased by 50% since the 1960s. Now, right at the end, I speculate on what we might do to improve the championship format. The counties can't agree on a change, and I have a solution which I think cuts the Gordian knot and benefits everyone. So think about this. Separate the championship into 2 stages. In the first half, the first 9 weeks of the season, split the counties regionally into North and Midlands, South and West. Thus, Essex, Middlesex, Kent, Surrey, Sussex, Hampshire, Somerset, Gloucestershire and Glamorgan form one region. Durham, Lancashire, Yorkshire, Notts, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Northants, Warwickshire and Worcestershire the other. In stage 1, the 9 teams in each group would play each other once. If this had been operating in 2025, stage 1 would have run from 4th of April to 2nd of June. Note, the regionality gives less travelling. Then split the teams into 3 divisions of 6 based on their positions. So Division 1 would contain the 6 teams with the highest points total, Division 2 the next 6, Division 3 the bottom 6. Then in each group, all would play all in the last 5 weeks of the season in 2025. That would have been 25 August to 27 September. So this would mean that there will be no format switching between long and short form as there is now in the 13 plus weeks from 3rd of June to 24th of August. The championship season would have 2 climaxes. Most importantly, every county would start the season with a chance of the title, not just 10 as now. There'll be no promotion and relegation apart from the mid-season split. So sides like Gloucestershire and Derbyshire and recently Leicestershire and Glamorgan, who were perpetually in the 2nd division, now have a chance of winning the title. Every county would play 13 games, 7 or 6 at home in alternate years, a reduction of 1 from the current 14. There will be less travelling at the start of the season, more at the end. There were 3-day rest as now, but there will be less of the travelling between games that bedevils mid-season at the moment, and no switch of format in mid-season. There would always be local derbies in the first half of the season, so there'd be a guaranteed Roses match, for example, which isn't the case now, and Worcestershire and Warwickshire and Surrey and Middlesex, and so on. I'd be very interested in your reaction to that, by the way. Finally, just to say, The book's cover price is £25 each. For fellow ACS members, I'm selling one for £25, including postage and package, two for 40, including postage and package, and order it from me at my publisher, libertybooks.uk. And here's the cover page of volume two. Volume one is blue. So there we are. I'll unshare and very happy to answer any questions you might have. Glad to see that Annie Chave is there. She was the first person to receive the books. I'll be very interested to hear her comments and criticisms if she has any. Hello, Annie.
I have read both books, and quite a lot of information you've included, Peter. It's quite a amazing array, and I really enjoyed the certainly the sections that explored what's happening in the world generally. I think you've covered those bits really nicely. I love all the little information, like all the grounds that are lost. There's so much there. It's quite hard to absorb it all. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and thank you. I think it's a work of art, really.
Thanks for the plug, Annie. Very glad you came. Any other observations? Have you got any, Rodney?
Well, I suppose I was going to ask, a week into this season, has anything struck you so far? If you were writing a fresh chapter for the book, how does your entertainment index check out so far for
Not
2026?
not too bad. I mean, we had two very big opening partnerships yesterday, and it'd be interesting to see how that goes on. Whether McKenny can take his 200 odd up further and further press his England claim. We could do with an opening bat. I don't know how Crawley has continued to beat off all opposition.
Yeah, and also, you gave us a broad overview of, people who've done amazing things over the course of their careers in the county championship. I wonder what your numbers, your adjusted numbers, show for individual seasons. Any players who have distinguished themselves in one season in particular.
Yes, I didn't mention that in the run through, but I've tabulated the best seasons everybody has had, and normalized averages over 100, for example, which Wally Hammond managed three times. Chris, yes.
Roddy, we're very interested in what you've done, Peter. I haven't got Nottinghamshire data, but I've calculated something more or less the same as you have done in terms
So you're
of
breaking up,
comparing
Chris.
people with various circles, batting averages compared with the average first class average for that season, and then
Yeah,
amalgamating that over the player's career.
yeah.
I've
You're still breaking up, Chris. Sorry, can't hear
I
you now.
actually differentiated
Sorry, Chris,
yeah,
if I may make a suggestion, why don't you turn your camera off? That might allocate more
yeah,
bandwidth
yeah.
to
I know.
your audio.
So I look at calculating a batting average index, the whole of someone's average first class average, and similarly for the bowling. Although for the bowling, what I do is I invert it. So the best bowler is by far, as you said, he has the advantage that his early years in New Zealand are not included because he
Yeah,
came
Richard
to
Richard
Nottinghamshire
Hadley.
as
Yes,
a
yeah,
player.
absolutely. In fact,
Um,
he'd be the top all rounder if he'd made more runs. He'd have beaten Tarrant.
yeah, I mean, I mean, there are very few people who both their career batting average is better, and their bowling average is lower than the first class average.
Yeah,
There are not very many, but Hadley and Rice are both up there.
yeah. Of course,
Obviously.
well, Hadley had his wickets made
Calculate
for him, but Trent Bridge, didn't he?
Well, yes, I look into that as well. So I calculate their average. So I calculate these averages compared with the national average
One thing I did with Fry and Ranjit,
for
by the way, yeah, sorry to cut across you, Chris. One thing I did with Fry and Ranjit was to see the extent to which that the advantage of playing on hove wickets helped them by comparing their normalized averages at home and away. And actually, they did benefit from that. But Jack Hobbs at the Oval, for example, he scored runs at a better average away from the Oval than he did at home.
Yeah, we've got Joe Hardstaff Jr. who played I think 1930 to 1955. His batting average at Trent Bridge is high. Other thing I do with the bowlers is I calculate their economy rate in comparison with the national average and their
Yeah,
strike in comparison. One who was very mean with his bowling, Alfred Shaw, in the 1870s and 1880s. And he stands out as being a very economical bowler. I think are really valuable. Nottinghamshire cricket started in 1826. So I go back to 1826. So it's not just the championship. I can do things separately for the championship. I go back to 1826 when I think from memory the average first class batting average was about 10.
Yep.
So you clearly do have to do some normalisation.
One of the things I did, by the way, separate from this, it's not in the book, is I looked at the batsmen that the bowlers got out. I looked at all the post-war English spinners, and Jim Laker comes out top. And what second to him on paper with a bowling average of 22 is Jeff Miller. But when you look at the averages of the people Miller dismissed, his average goes out much worse because he was playing against Australia. I just did it for England against Australia. So otherwise, I couldn't compare to the 1880s, 1890s players, because he bowled a lot against the Australian side during the Packer era, when the Packer players weren't playing for Australia. So essentially, England were playing Australia's second 11, which is what led them to win a series 5-1 under Brearley, if you remember.
I wonder if I might give our guest an opportunity to distinguish his book from its immediate predecessor, and I suppose rival if it's still in print, Summer's Crown. I think on the basis of your presentation today, Peter, it's obvious that you have a very different focus, but perhaps you'd like to tease it out a bit.
I hadn't read Stephen Chalk's book when I decided to write this one, and I hadn't realised it was quite so recent. I read some earlier ones, so I was a bit daunted by the fact that I was following in his illustrious footsteps. But I essentially I write twice as much about each year, and for example, in his averages section, he doesn't give you the top batsmen and bowlers by average. He gives them top batsmen and bowlers by number of runs or wickets, which I think is wrong. And he doesn't give you the top all-rounder. And I think the top all-rounder of a season is crucial, because, as I said in the preamble, they're worth two players, a Hadley and a Rice. I mean, Notts played 13 players with Hadley and Rice in their team, and Yorkshire did two with Hurst and Rhodes just before the war.
Now, as to your proposal for reform, I wonder if anyone has any thoughts about that or challenges to it.
Proposal for
reform, your idea of how the championship
I've been
might
very
be
interested in your
reformed and
observations on that.
safeguarded going forward.
If you remember, when one day cricket came in, for the first time, it gave counties the opportunity that when they started the season, every single county was 4 matches, it's a knockout, 4 matches away from a Lord's final. And across the following 10 years, every single county, apart from Yorkshire, who'd won the championship, won a short form title. So it gave counties much greater chance of winning a title because there were 4 going in a year. And this one gives the lesser counties a chance to get into that top 6, as it has been. Sides like Leicestershire and Derbyshire and Glamorgan and Gloucestershire have been stuck in the lower division for years without a chance of a title.
Yeah, so has anyone any comments on those proposals? Any challenges, preferably? It would be nice if we got some heat to generate some light.
Yes, can I speak up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
But the only problem that you've got with the end of the season split is that at the beginning of the season you can't plan who you're going to be playing, who you can go and watch later on in the season. But otherwise, I think it's a great scheme that everybody's got the chance to participate.
Yes, I copied it to Hugh Turbeville at the Cricketer, hoping that he'd publish it, but he didn't.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, you've given us the hard sell on your book, but I wonder if you were tasked with promoting the county championship yourself, if it were your job to give us a hard sell for the event itself rather than your book on same, what would you say?
The county championship was changed from 3 to 4 days to make it more appropriate as a breeding ground for the test team. And for many years it was that. But under the present management, performances in county cricket tend to be completely ignored. They go for tall, young spinners and very fast bowlers. Now, it's noticeable that apart from Mitchell Starc, the most successful Australian bowlers were fast medium in the winter, the ones who would do well in English county cricket. And for example, Sam Cook, who did very well for the A team in the previous winter in South Africa, in Australia, was not invited to tour, which I think was a serious mistake. Um, Similarly, we picked in West Indies, in India 3 years ago, we picked Hartley, Bashir, and Rehan Ahmed, who had very poor county records and left behind, and they took Leach as well. And the best county spinners at the moment are Leach, Dawson, and Dom Bess. I just think there's a disconnect that wasn't there when the county championship first went 4 days.
I'll just come in here. I totally agree with you, Peter, about all of that, but that has I think the England management have had their fingers burnt from the Ashes.
Yeah.
And I do think they are genuinely looking at county players this season. Whether that comes to anything, then we'll see. But certainly, the two games that I've been involved with this season so far, we've had scouts at the game, and that hasn't happened for ages. So, I think there is a genuine feeling that they need to be really definitely looking at county players
Yeah.
now. So I think you're absolutely right. Bashir spent a winter over at the Ashes, taking the drinks out, having been prepared for those Ashes for 2 years, and did not get a game. And it's been a very difficult time for England, I think, and they really do need to start checking on the counties again, which is lovely.
At least he's now getting a game, and he took 4 wickets the
Yes,
other
he
day,
did, absolutely. He will be getting a game at Derbyshire, which
which
is
is not
good news.
and the racecourse ground isn't really a ground for spinners, so he did
No,
well.
no, absolutely.
Are you
So
really in a tropical island, by the way, Annie, or is that
yes, I am in a tropical
fantasy?
island. I wish I was. I'm about to go to Taunton, so it's very cold here.
Yeah.
I saw Will Smeed got
Mm.
on the pitch the other day, which is a pretty interesting development. This was a
Well,
guy who
yes, having been having
having
decided
retired
he
from first class
yes,
cricket before he'd played any. Yeah, I wonder if you think that betokens anything.
I
Is
think it
that
does.
symbolic of something? I
Yeah,
mean,
I think it's a
his sort of premature retirement was regarded as a horrible harbinger of things to come. So it's
Sorry, who are
tempting
you talking
to
about, Rodney?
Will
Will
Smeed.
Smith.
Ah, yes.
Will Smeed at
Yeah.
Somerset, but I think what has happened is he's seen what has happened to Banton, Tom Banton, who's in the same team, obviously,
Mm.
and Tom Banton has changed from playing just mostly white ball and had a fantastic season the last couple of seasons, got his 372 last season,
Yeah.
and has succeeded massively in white ball because of that. So I think that's partly why Smeed has changed his idea and wants to play red ball. But it's fantastic to see that happening, and I hope it doesn't, keep going that way, the other way towards
We all
playing
want Somerset
different.
to win the title this year.
Do
And
I want
Do
Somerset?
we?
we all do. We
We all
all want
do. I
Somerset.
bet not everybody does,
They
but
come so close so often.
it would be lovely if that happened.
I think
The other
we
ones, Gloucestershire,
Hmm?
as I discovered, came very close between the walls. In fact,
Yeah.
one season they were leading by a huge margin way out and couldn't win any of their remaining matches.
Yeah, no, I found that fascinating in your book. I pored over all the results of the every year because it's fascinating as a Somerset fan to see that Somerset didn't feature hardly at all until sort of the 70s, did they? Really,
No,
they
no.
weren't in the top 10 very often. And then there was very much Surrey and Lancashire and
Yeah.
Kent and that sort of, those people were in the top.
And Northants came second by a very, very narrow margin in 1912, the wet season of 1912, the Triangulature.
Mm.
Northants came second only 7 years after joining the championship in the first
Yeah,
place.
fantastic.
That
Yeah.
was extraordinary. And no batsman had an average of above 30, and there were 2 centuries, only 2 centuries in a season.
I don't believe you've told us yet, Peter, who you support.
Ah, well, I'm promiscuous.
Ah,
I was brought up in Surrey.
the best way to be.
Between the ages of 7 and 14, Surrey won the title 7 times in succession. I I supported Derbyshire because I was born there and I played a captain there under 19 in 1964. And I now support Worcestershire because my youngest grandson's playing for the second team at the moment.
We have a question in the chat section from Chris, who of course getting a bit let down by his internet connection earlier. He says, apropos of your suggestions for reforming the calendar, counties wouldn't like not knowing who their fixtures for the season would be. Would be costly to arrange hotel accommodation for the second half of the
Yes, they
season.
know their fixtures for the first half, for the first nine, but not for the for the first eight, but not for the last five.
I
That
think
is
that's
absolutely
tricky also for
true.
fans as well. I know a lot of fans will start over the winter plan their
Yeah.
whole summer with the fixtures. So I think
Yeah.
both things are, your plan has good and bad points, like everything really. It's never clear cut, is it? I'm personally quite keen on the idea of having, as there was trialed at one point, wasn't there, 3 and 4 day games at the same time? During the season, some 3 day games and some 4 day games.
Yeah.
All right. Has anyone any other questions? Don't be shy. A few of you have been very quiet.
Can I make an observation, please?
Yes, please.
I just hope, as a Gloucestershire supporter, that nobody will take the slightest notice of the double century that's been made against what can only be described as a club standard bowling attack. I just want to get that out of the way. It's hard to believe that there's ever been a county going into a season in modern times with so few bowlers of any consequence at their disposal. I saw them in action at Lord's, and it's no surprise that Durham have helped themselves to runs. I must say, going on to the earlier thing, that I think that what has been proposed as a format for the county championship is extremely good. For the diehards, it will do nothing to answer the problem that there is no championship cricket in the middle of the season, which doesn't worry me as much as it worries many people. And surely you're going to get plenty of time between the end of the first half of the season and the second for the fixtures to be worked out and
Yes, you've got a 13-week gap.
publicised. You've got plenty of time there. I think, can I go on to a completely different tack? And that is to say that books of this kind depend desperately on the accuracy of everything that goes into them. And I know this from bitter past experience of trying to do almost any kind of analysis to do with cricket. And I wonder to what extent your book has been, should we say, peer reviewed? Because I'm going to be quite frank now. You produced a book some years ago that I think I reviewed, well, I know I reviewed for the ACS, and I found a lot of errors in it. The most serious one, and it really was a serious one, was talking about the remuneration of cricketers, where you put an extra naught on the end of the typical salary in the 1950s. And I just wonder, against that background, if you've got the confidence that everything that you have done isn't just the work of one man and someone has peer reviewed it.
Well, Kevin Jones is an ACS member who was responsible for downloading all the data off Cricket Archive for me. Has been through it, and I've sent it to a number of my friends, who are cricketing friends, in the way it was en route to its final destination. So, I mean, there's a hell of a lot of data in there, and there's bound to be some mistakes. I accept that. I didn't know there was a mistake in 60 Summers. I have to say, in that table, that's new to me.
There's quite a lot, actually. But then that's not atypical for books that any of us may write. But there was just this one absolute howler on the salaries of the players.
Right. I have it. I have the book in front of me.
Well, I don't think it's necessary that we do an autopsy of your previous book.
No, it isn't. I quite agree with you, Rodney. But I still think the point I'm making is that it's terribly easy for things to slip under the radar and we accept. I mean, for years we accepted that Woolley had held 1,000 catches until someone counted them.
Yes.
Derek, do you have a question? You were leaning in rather close to your webcam a few moments ago. I thought you were on the brink of breaking your silence.
You're muted, Derek. Derek is muted. Perhaps he doesn't want to say anything.
No, perhaps not. Okay. Okay. Well, any
Douglas, have you
closing
written cricket
thoughts
books
then?
yourself?
Yes.
Have you managed to avoid the mistakes that other people have made with their stats, do you think?
I am aware of mistakes that I have made. Yes. I haven't written books that were quite so deep into statistical analysis
Yeah.
of yours. I have written articles that are, which I keep my fingers crossed on. I mean, I think we're all in the same boat to some degree. But yes, I mean, I don't want to make too much of it, but I did put a health warning on this book based on your previous one. I mean, that's
Okay.
being absolutely straightforward, and it's as reviewed at the time in the ACS.
Right.
I mean, I did say, I think at one time, if it had been a car, it would be called in for um, sort of checks and the way that they did.
I didn't read that review. I'm glad I didn't actually.
Yeah. I'm glad you were spared that. Shall we have some concluding thoughts then? Perhaps
Yeah, two things. Please, can you elucidate on how one gets the £40 version, shall we say? You know, that we've got to get the publisher to agree that we're honest people. And the second thing I'd like to make is completely different. Have you or anybody else for that matter taken notice of the fact that it's easier to score runs against Division Two bowlers than Division One bowlers? And I mean, Surrey did really well against Leicestershire yesterday, for instance, and we've just had the reference about Ben McKinney doing well against Gloucestershire's third, shall we say, third division standard bowlers. Because to me, it's so much more important than that runs are scored at first division level. I mean, Crawley, who was mentioned earlier, can't even get them against second division bowlers. So there's no reason why he should play for England whatsoever. But yeah, the practical thing first, and then the controversy. Thank you.
Well, I can see Hugh's face there. Hugh, if you would circulate to every member the document that Rodney has sent you, then right at the end it tells you how to get hold of the book. As your second point, it is difficult to extract them. Not least because not all second division bowling attacks are poorer than first division bowling attacks. That's one of the issues. So I haven't made any distinction between first and second divisions.
and then I was going to press you or had pressed you before we got that excellent question about your prognostications for the season. Let's have a few predictions we can hold you to.
Oh, crikey. I'd like to think that the number of wickets that spinners take will be very much increased in 2026 over 2025. I'm just hoping that sides are prepared to play their spinners. That's the great loss in English cricket between the 50s, 60s, 70s, and now is the paucity of spinners. There's hardly any spinner turns up in the top five for any year since 1990 that aren't foreigners like Murali or Saeed Ajmal or Mushtaq and Saqlain for that matter. Hardly an Englishman. Jack Leach is the most recent, who should be playing every match for England, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, and then some hard predictions. Who's going up, who's staying down, and who's winning the thing? Come on.
Oh, golly. I think Glamorgan will go back down again, and Leicestershire might well as well. I
Okay.
think Surrey a good bet for the title again. But their bowling is a bit weak at the moment. They haven't got Dan Worrell, they haven't got Atkinson, so they need to start taking some wickets because they didn't in the first match.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's been very interesting.
And thank you for coming.
Yeah, and please do all turn out in a fortnight's time for what I think will be a really interesting, robust, and polemical presentation on the future of the international game and the problems associated with having a hegemon. See
Yeah.
you all then, and thanks very much, Peter. Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.